Hallo. I think that's how you say hello in Dutch. Yes, this weekend I went to Amsterdam, and that in and of itself is obviously very cool, but because of this book, it's 1,000 times cooler. Speaking of which, if you have not yet read The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, I would probably highly recommend stopping watching this video right now because there will be spoilers. But at this point, I feel like I shouldn't have to tell you because you just need to read it if you haven't already. It's a fantastic book. Moving on. So one of my favorite quotes about the city from this book comes from page 157 when they're in the cab ride on the way from the airport into the city. The cabbie says, "Some tourists think Amsterdam is a city of sin, but in truth, it is a city of freedom. And in freedom, most people find sin." Now yes, let me tell you that most of the other tourists that we encountered while we were there for the sinny parts of Amsterdam, as I'm sure you could imagine. But for me, at least, this was my main reason of going to that city. Oh my god. And one of the absolute coolest parts was just seeing and doing the same things that Hazel and Augustus saw and did. It just kind of blew my mind to actually see the Anne Frank house and walk through it, and to climb up those sets of stairs that were essentially glorified ladders, and just to imagine everything that was going through all of their heads and that they actually experienced this. Granted, I realize that they are literary characters and not actually real people, but still, I mean, Anyway, so on one of the first days we took a canal tour, which was so cool to see the contrast in some of the buildings in the city. For instance, some of the buildings were incredibly new and modern looking, like this one, which I actually have no idea what this building is, and this one is the Science Museum, which I will talk about in more detail in just a few moments. But then as soon as we left the harbor area of the city's waterways and we entered into the small canals that ran all over the city, we started to see these beautiful old canal houses and old buildings, and it was almost as if the houses were leaning on each other, were using themselves for support. How without another house on either side of it, it would tumble into the canal. Now, one thing that Hazel says about Amsterdam I found particularly interesting. She thought that it would be wonderfully strange to live in a place where almost everything was built by the dead. And I can definitely see where she's coming from with that, but for me, it's not so much that it's built by the dead, but it's built by history. And it's just that walking down these streets and along these canals and across these bridges, I almost feel like I'm just taking a step back in time and walking through history and seeing all these wonderful things that people from the past have left for us. So it's kind of sort of the same outlook, but a little different, I guess. Now, speaking of beautiful buildings, I found this. Oh my god. I'm like, this is, oh my god. So as you can tell by my incredible incoherentness, I was incredibly excited to have found out that this is like a real place. But just to make things even more fantastic, the street that the Hotel Philosophe is located on is the Anna van den Wandelstraat. Anna, like from An Imperial Affliction. Anna. Now, I don't know if this is just a happy coincidence or if John Green got the name Anna from this street, but either way, that kind of like... And of course, I didn't realize until I was on the train back to Paris that Peter Van Houten's address is printed in the book, and I walked past it without even realizing that I was walking past where Peter Van Houten's house would be. Oh my god. And of course, as you probably know, John Green, the author of The Fault in Our Stars, lived in Amsterdam for 2 months while he was finishing it up. And during those 2 months, he worked on his book at the Central Library of Amsterdam, which I believe is this library right here. And actually, I went inside in search of a John Green book of sorts, but unfortunately I could not find any. However, I did find Morin Johnson books in Dutch, which is kind of cool. So yes, the Nemo Science Museum. If you are a fan of Alex Day or Nariman on YouTube, you may recognize this museum because when they, meaning Alex and Charlie, went to Amsterdam like last year or something, they went to this museum and Alex talked about it in his video. So that was really cool, like seeing some of the things that they did and like this huge robot thing and like the sciencey other stuff about the museum things. Yeah, it was really cool. It was very obviously geared toward children, but you know, that's really okay. But actually, there was one thing on the top level that was very much like Charlie's shocking game, and of course, both times that we played, I got shocked. And one last thing that I found just really fantastic about the city of Amsterdam in general was its familiarity. And despite the fact that there were canals running through the middle of the city and that we used trams to get from place to place, there was something that just reminded me of home about it. I don't know if it was the excess of Tifios-induced craziness or the fact that I saw things that John mentioned in his videos while he was living there, and I mean, it was probably a big combination of those two things. But one other thing that I found very almost comforting about the city was just looking at the canals at night. Every summer my family and I spend a lot of time at this gorgeous lake, and it was almost that the sparkling of the lights on the waters in Amsterdam almost reminded me of just spending time with my family and spending time in a beautiful mountainous place, even though there were no mountains at all to be seen in the Netherlands. But nonetheless, it was comforting to see the sparkly lights reflecting in the water, and I really can't wait to have the opportunity to go back. I think that is it. Okay. Also, I saw this, which I think is where John's author photo was taken, which is pretty freaking cool. No, please, can you just 2 seconds? Oh my god.